Hi, everybody, and welcome to week 4. I apologize for not creating a video for last week. I actually got thrown off by the short week because I didn't work at all over the holiday and then kind of forgot that time kind of got past me last week. So anyway, I apologize for that. I hope you're still enjoying the class. I'm really enjoying reading what you guys are writing. It's excellent, and I'm really liking the interaction on the discussion board has been fantastic, so keep it up. And I hope that this week gets you just as stirred up as all the other stuff we've done. This week we're talking about education in America, and there's a lot of implications in this having to do with Black psychology. So I'm looking forward to the discussion we're going to have. I wanted to make a couple of points about this week's topic. First, I wanted to mention that one of the big topics for this week is to talk about how public schools are funded in the United States. And often, in many parts of the country, that's done by tax dollars, primarily property tax dollars. And that's true in most places. And in some places, those property tax dollars stay in the area where the properties are located. So if you have a neighborhood school, in many parts of the country, that neighborhood school is going to be partially funded by the property tax dollars collected in that neighborhood. So what that means is that wealthier areas where property values are higher, thus property taxes are higher, the schools have more money. And in poorer areas where property values are lower, thus property taxes are lower, they have less money. And so it ends up creating a situation where even though schools are not segregated anymore by race, at least not officially segregated anymore by race, because neighborhoods are often de facto segregated by race, you will find that the schools in many areas are still racially segregated. So they're predominantly are all white, or predominantly are almost all black, or whatever the ethnic group happens to be in that area that's prominent. You'll see schools that are prominently occupied by that ethnic group. And if the money from that neighborhood stays in that neighborhood, then they're funded primarily by the money from that neighborhood. It can create large financial disparities between schools, even in the same school district. In some parts of the country, it's really significantly different. And so this week you're reading a chapter from a book. The book was written by Jonathan Kozol, and the book is called Savage Inequalities. And it was written quite a long time ago. I mean, it was written in the 90s. But I still am recommending that you read that chapter, because the disparity that he talks about in East St. Louis is a real disparity, and this problem still has not been solved. And having driven through East St. Louis, Missouri in the 90s, I can attest to the fact that it is as he describes it. And not much has changed since 1996. So I hope that though the chapter might be a little dated, that you can still see the value of what he's talking about. And he paints a very stark contrast. If at all possible, I recommend that you read the entire book. I recommend this book. It's not a very big book. It's a paperback. It's a really good book. Jonathan Kozol has written several books on this topic. He had one come out fairly recently that points to the fact that the problem has still not been solved. But I like this chapter from Savage Inequalities, so that's the one I'm having you read. So anyway, I want you to think about how property tax dollars are used, how they're allocated to the schools, and if maybe there's a better way to do things. So that might help to solve some of the problems of de facto segregation in schools, because there's so much, race and socioeconomic status are what we call confounded. Often areas where there is predominantly an ethnic minority group, often those areas are poorer than the areas that are predominantly white. And so what you get is, even though the schools are not segregated on purpose anymore, because of de facto segregation and the school funding formulas in many parts of the country, you still see those schools being poorly funded compared to their counterparts in other parts of a district or a state. So that's one thing. The other major thing I want you to grapple with this week has to do with college admissions processes. And so a lot of colleges use some formula for deciding, how you can get into that college. Many of them have a rule that, the top 10% of the graduating class, if you were in the top 10% of your graduating class, you can get in. That was done primarily for race reasons, so that people who are in poorer inner city areas where it might be primarily an ethnic minority group would still be able to get into the college if they were in the top 10% of their graduating class. So that was part of it. That's one method. Another thing that some colleges do is that they have a formula that has to do with testing on your scores on standardized tests like the SAT or the ACT, your high school GPA, and those formulas may include race. One such institution was the University of Texas, and this summer there was a Supreme Court case there was a ruling on that case by the Supreme Court, and it was a case where a white potential student, a girl who had applied to the University of Texas, a young woman, did not get in. She was white, and she sued, saying that had she been a minority, she would have gotten in, so the reason she didn't get in was because she was white. And so I've had a link to a website or an article about that case so that you can see what happened with that case. And I want you to give some critical thought to, after considering these issues with public education in America, how do we grapple with college admissions? So what do? Do we have formulas that include race as a factor? Do we include something else as a factor instead of race? Maybe socioeconomic status or something else? Or do you have another alternative? And I want us to assume that not everybody can get in to the university who applies. So what I want you to think about is if the university has a limited capacity so that it cannot accept everybody who wants to get in, that there's some finite number of spots. So they have to make decisions about who's going to get in and not everybody's going to get in. Then how do they make those decisions? How do you decide who gets in and who doesn't? So that's what I want you to think about, and see if you can come up with what you think would be a good admission strategy for universities to use. So something else for us to think about. So those are the two major topics this week. There's certainly lots of other things, and I'm sure that you guys will bring them up in the discussion boards, so I'll be looking forward to reading your discussion boards. But anyway, I think that's all I have for you right now. If you have any questions about anything, please don't hesitate to call me or email me. Canvas is probably the best way to get a hold of me, so feel free to shoot me a message through Canvas. I always check my Canvas messages first because those are from students before I look at my regular email. So Canvas is a good way, but you can call as well. I'm in my office 5 days a week, so you can reach me on my office phone as well. Okay? I hope you have a great week, and I'll be talking to you guys soon.